Welcome to Tech Leaders Today with your host, Cassie Crossley. All comments, views, and opinions expressed on this show are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers. Now here's Cassie Crossley.
Welcome to Tech Leaders Today. I'm here with Rowan Benecke, who is with Burson-Marsteller. He is the Global Technology Practice Chair. He's a member of their Global Executive Leadership Team and has more than 20 years of experience developing strategic communication programs for consumer and technology brands in the electronic commerce, consumer electronics, enterprise software, semiconductors, and telecommunications sectors. Welcome, Rowan.
Thank you, Cassie. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I wanted to find out more about this survey that you just released. Can you tell us about the survey, the title, and what it contains?
Sure, Cassie. Yeah, I'd love to. So Burson-Marsteller conducted a tech policy survey that we've called the Age of Trump Tech Policy Survey. What we're really looking to determine when we set out to put this together was just after Trump was announced that he was elected as the president-elect, and representing the technology industry with a number of tech clients who do a lot of business in the US, but also global clients who operate in multiple countries who are concerned with what are some of the issues that are up for review or potentially will be facing changes when it comes to regulation or policy development, or how the government will view some of these tech issues differently under Trump. And we anticipated that there would be a fair amount of anxiety or perhaps fear, but certainly that we anticipated that there would be some degree of uncertainty. What we wanted to determine through asking questions of two different audiences, the technology elites in the US, as defined by people who work in or invest in the technology sector, as well as the general population, people who have an opinion about the tech industry but don't necessarily are involved in it. And so we wanted to find out what these two different audiences, what they thought were going to be issues that the Trump administration was going to be facing when it came to matters that were close to the tech industry's heart. So that's what we set out to do. And this, coincidentally, the survey was in the field at about the same time that President-elect was convening all the different tech leaders in New York in mid-December. So it was sort of in the news, and we felt that we had hit on something in terms of trying to understand what the needs were, and if there was a void, people didn't know what to expect or what to think about, that we were able to fill that with some real data and some information that we hope was going to be helpful.
The survey itself had many interesting points. One of the points that I wanted to ask you about is the comment that you have in there about most Americans say technology is a job creator. Can you talk about that? What is it like for the technology industry going forward that you see potentially in President Trump's administration?
Yeah, so that's right. One of the key findings is that we were somewhat surprised is that there's a high degree of optimism that both the general population and the technology industry have about the prospects of the tech industry under President Trump. So 76% of elites and 59% of the general public feel that the tech industry's best days are ahead of it. And so that was surprising given some of the rhetoric during the campaigns. But as you pointed out, one of the specific issues here is around job creation. And while many in the tech industry see technology as a force of good, as creating economic development and creating jobs, a significant percentage of the general population believe that the tech industry is actually a job destroyer. In fact, 37% of the general population folks that we surveyed think that technology is a job destroyer. So, we think that there is a point here for the tech industry to be seen as not only bringing jobs to people who are creating innovation in the workplace, but there needs to address the issue of jobs being shipped overseas and the fact that people feel somewhat threatened by automation and by robotics and AI and some of the things that have tended to drive efficiencies in the tech industries. There is a risk that the general population, while they see innovation as being important to the overall economy in America, there's a risk that the general population will feel left behind and that there is a divide. That's an opportunity, we think, for the tech industry to address.
That is something that I'm seeing quite a bit of talk on. In fact, in the last couple of months since he was elected and now is in office, there have been a number of announcements that certain jobs, such in the Rust Belt sector, which has been primarily in the manufacturing for automobiles and different industries like that. They're starting to come back. So that does not seem quite like a job destroyer, because although we automate and we can industrialize certain activities, there is still jobs there to be had.
Absolutely. Speaking for the average American, according to the survey data that we've compiled, is that there is broad agreement that the tech industry is good for the American sort of economic success story, but it's rather an abstract story. The general consumer has been buying a lot of these products that have been created over the last decade, but they don't necessarily participate directly in the tech industry. This lack of participation in the economic growth that we've seen over the last 7 or 8 years, there is a feeling that some of these Americans don't see the connection between their own economic well-being and what's been enjoyed by the tech industry. There is a general feeling that while the tech industry has been good, it hasn't necessarily been good for them. But what we do see that the data points to specifically is that things like STEM education and on-the-jobs training and helping connect communities that heretofore haven't enjoyed some of the benefits of the technology industry, these are the opportunities for the tech industry to talk about not only what they're doing in their own businesses and in their own sectors, but how are they helping to create business with purpose that these general population folks, and typically in the flyover states, feel that they haven't enjoyed. And so while there have been lots of things that the tech industry has done and recently has announced, I think there's more that the tech industry can do to address how, in fact, they are helping general folks generate new skills and how these skills are helping to translate into real job opportunities, and what these companies are doing in these communities to enable these different citizens to have benefits of the technology that we've been talking about for the last decade or so.
Yes. If you look at the types of jobs as part of the computer science or even just the technology background with data science there and more extension on analytics, and now you have automation engineers that are working on autonomous vehicles, there are so many new growth opportunities for technology in those different fields that weren't around. And you mentioned even AR and AI and VR. It wasn't there 10 years ago. So there is quite a bit coming forward, and I do believe we're going to see a number of new advancements in America, but anywhere globally with these technologies coming about.
Yeah, a couple of data points to share with you. I mean, 58% of the general population and 42% of the elites that we surveyed say that the U.S. education system is not adequately preparing people for today's tech-driven workplace. That's an opportunity for the tech industry to talk about what exactly they're doing to address that. And I think the good news here is, on the whole, both elites and certainly the general population have an expectation that the tech industry should be responsible for promoting and funding digital skills. So specifically, 61% of tech elites and 68% of the general public say that responsibility about skills training and an opportunity that's tech-oriented should come from the tech industry and not from government. There is an opportunity, I think, for many tech companies who are typically very happy to talk about, their new product or their new service or their new customers, but are generally reticent to talk about, things that are maybe softer in terms of CSR or things like training or the development of communities, maybe because culturally they're more modest or perhaps not to be seen as chest beating. But I think the survey points out that if we don't do that as a tech industry, if we don't rise to this challenge where the population sees it's our responsibility to create these opportunities for promoting and funding digital skills training, they don't see that necessarily from government. So I think that's good news for us.
I agree. At Burson-Marsteller, do you have other technology trends that you're following? What are you finding?
Yeah, absolutely. We're lucky enough at Burson-Marsteller to work with a number of leading global companies who are doing great things in the technology space, but also with a number of innovators who are disrupting some of the more established brands. So we get to see both sides of what's happening. And one of the standout trends, I think, that both classes of clients in the established sector and those that are more in the up and coming is this rise of artificial intelligence. Some of the market factors that have created the opportunity that we've, all heard about in the last year or so, as evidenced by machine learning, that is just sort of leading this explosive expansion where once you're able to program a task, that the system is able to automatically improve on that task with more data and more experience. So the systems are getting better at these assigned tasks without requiring any new programming. So it learns from the data itself. And so, the more data that you're able to throw at some of these algorithms and AI systems, this exponential leap that we're seeing now, some of the analysts that we are in touch with say that the AI market in 2014 was something, to the tune of $420 million globally. And by 2020, that's expected to reach more than $5 billion. So, there is some unbelievable growth opportunities. And that certainly speaks to the opportunity for tech companies, but it's also for companies in other sectors. So specifically in the finance sector is expected to play a big role. Robo-advising is just the beginning in finance, but we're also seeing, other applications and use cases, particularly in healthcare, the ability of AI systems like Watson to increase the opportunity for humans to make better decisions based on data that they're seeing in clinical trials or treatment simulations, etc. AI is definitely probably one of the most significant trends that we're seeing across all different tech sectors at the moment.
Do you think over decades of movies where AI was the villain, what do you think of that from a public relations point of view?
Well, let's look at a particular use case such as autonomous driving, where AI machine learning is specifically part of the big breakthroughs that we've seen just this in the last 12 months, right? I mean, the technology exists where cars actually can drive themselves for the most part. I mean, there's 5 levels of automation from simply keeping you in the lane at the first level to, where you can turn around in your seats and not have to pay attention to the wheel or pedals, and at the 5th level of automation. And in between is kind of where we are now. The technology is commercially and technically viable, but the challenge is more of the human side, specifically around trust in the technology, more specifically around how humans view the legal and the regulatory environment. And so it's going to take some time for humans to trust that it's okay for me to not put my hands on the wheel, or in fact to not even look at the road, in the logical extreme of the circumstance. But it's going to take even longer for humans to come together to agree on what is the right legal and regulatory framework when there is no driver, who owns the data, who's responsible for when that data creates a problem that results in a mistake in a car crash. Who do you hold responsible if there's no driver? Is it the car company? Is it the mapping company? Is it the highway transportation authority? Is it something else? And I think that's the challenge and the opportunity as marketers and communicators. It's not necessarily just to talk about what the technology can do, but to talk about why it's better and how, in fact, these things are going to play in a way that's going to be safe and enjoyable and successful for everybody.
The technology area that you spoke about on the autonomous cars is something that I've had many discussions with people, because I am waiting for that first car so I can buy it. I do believe that for the teenage audience and the elderly audience, it can bring so much more. There's so many use cases and people that it can help. From the standpoint of technology, there are so many different things at an enterprise and mid-level company size that we can move forward with technology. Are there any last technology pieces that you would see that, let's say, a CIO should be aware of for technology trends?
Yes, I think the idea of screenless computing is something that we are starting to see a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about in sort of the tech elite circles. Coming out of the Consumer Electronics Show earlier, the rise of voice activation and voice-enabled technologies, with the specific example of Alexa from Amazon. Instead of living in a Pringles-sized speaker where it began, we've seen the application for voice, certainly at CES, crop up in a number of different use cases, from literally washing machines to phones to cars to just about anything that you can think of. So, for decades, mere mortals have interacted with technology either through a tactile keyboard or more recently through touchscreen or with mice, but we're increasingly seeing that that's not necessary, that we can get beyond the screen, and voice is just one of those applications. We've seen the idea of mind control is very much in the lab, perhaps at the moment, but we've seen formations of drones at the University of Florida, for instance, who were able to fly around a particular, navigable space indoors. And then the pilots were only controlling these drones through sensors and headsets that were connected to brainwaves. By just thinking about moving a complicated piece of technology like a flying drone to something more prosaic about, ordering pizza or playing a tune that you like, the idea is not too far-fetched that that we no longer need to be behind a screen and to interact with technology that requires a physical interface. But the idea of using eye control for some physically impaired type scenarios, we're seeing that won't take that much longer for these screenless-based interactions, whether it's your voice or whether it's your brain or whether it's your eyes, to be able to do some powerful things, including calling up the information about a customer or about a particular product in your enterprise. I don't think that we're too far away from that being a reality.
Yes, I agree. I have been listening to different software as a service podcasts, and one of the points that you see quite often is just the intelligence around doing emails and going through that intelligence of what should you be doing next. Well, if I didn't even have to touch my emails every day, that would be great. After getting some days several hundred emails, it would be wonderful if I could somehow be able to do this without any kind of touch. I use quite often Siri just to compose emails, but I would like it to be able to have a dialogue and really be able to be unassociated with a computer at times would be very nice. So I think that there are many opportunities for that in the future tech field.
I think it's not just in the rational space, decision-making and getting information. I think there's also the application in more sort of creative industries too. Talking for marketing communications category that, I represent, it was surprised to see earlier last year in 2016 that an advertising agency in Japan hired an artificial intelligence agent to be their creative director. I think the idea of some industries are protected because we're more creative and that's where humans do best. I think that's true. But there's also the example of an advertising agency developing/hiring an AI to look at what makes a fantastic award-winning advertisement and then to be able to make recommendations so that the humans can deliver different custom ideas for a particular client. I think is eye-opening for many of us who are in industries where we are very proud of the high human quotient that's involved. It's exciting times for us, and certainly some of the survey data points to that we were talking about earlier, that there is optimism for this. And that there is optimism that the tech industry is going to do well to continue economic development and job creation. But there is a risk if we don't connect with the average consumer and talk about why this is important and deal with some of the human aspects and the emotional aspects of this technology, including fear, whether it be losing my job or whatever that may be. That is the opportunity for us in the short term as some of these exciting technologies come online, is to talk about not just the rational, but also to deal with the emotional. And that's a great place for marketers and communicators to be.
I like that, the rational more than the emotional. That's very good, because we actually, as technologists, sometimes, more often than not, talk technical rather than even rational or emotional. So I think that you're really hitting that point where we need to be taking it one step further. Speaking of one step further, how do people reach out and find out more about Burson-Marsteller?
You can certainly come to Burson-Marsteller.com or bm.com. There's a lot of information about us as a company. You can reach out to me individually. I'm on Twitter at Rowan Benecke, or my email address is rowan.benecke@bm.com, and I would love to connect and continue the conversation with anybody who might be interested.
Thank you so much for being on the show with me today, Rowan.
Thank you, Cassie. This has been fun. I've enjoyed the conversation.
I want to thank you so much for listening today. If you love this podcast, please do share it with your friends and colleagues, and please leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, because it makes a difference for circulation. For the show notes and other great info, enter your email into the mailing list at techleaderstoday.com. Thank you.